Good morning. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to see some old faces, some new faces. Welcome to the OpenNMS Users Conference. OpenNMS was started in 1999, and my involvement with it actually started in 2001. It's kind of nice. We have people like Seth who were actually involved in OpenNMS before I was. So we've been around for 16 years now. And my role in OpenNMS is, I really don't know, because my only talent is surrounding myself with amazing people who do all the work, and I get a lot of the credit. So I want to make sure that everyone else knows that I do very little for this organization. I was very pleased when Alex went out and started this OpenNMS Foundation. The idea of having an organization that was owned by the users, that promoted this open source software for the users and not some corporate entity, et cetera, was very pleasing to me. So anyway, this little talk is called State of OpenNMS, and I kind of wanted to go over what we're up to. A lot more detail will be available in these conferences. So if you go to some of the sessions and you want more detail, you'll be able to find some of that information. The last time we did the OpenNMS Users Conference was in Southampton, England in April of last year. So a lot of things have happened. This is our users conference. Every year we also hold a developers conference. As Alex mentioned, we get together for 1 week every year and write code and determine direction of the product and things like that. So we've actually had 2 of those in June of 2014 and June of 2015, and they just keep getting better, I think, every year. We have probably about 40, maybe 50 contributors to OpenNMS, and that pales in comparison to, say, the kernel. But I'm proud of it. I mean, they're hardcore people, they're great people, they're very, very talented. And what we've ended up doing is we've actually had 4 major releases of OpenNMS since the last time we all got together. We've had OpenNMS 14, Horizon 15, Meridian 2015, and Horizon 16. You'll notice that we never had an OpenNMS 2 or an OpenNMS 3 or an OpenNMS 4. Last year we decided when we were working on OpenNMS 1.14 that since we've been around for 15 years, maybe we ought to have a 2.0 release. So we decided to adopt the Java method, which is basically, let's just get rid of the first bits in the front and just call it 14. And so that's what we did. Now, one of the things that this group in this room is really responsible for is a documentation project. You can go to docs.opennms.org. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong. You have to poke around a bit to find the real value. But it's this idea of let's try to communicate to people why OpenNMS is so awesome. And this is just a random slide. This is from the configuring DHCP monitor in OpenNMS. And we have graphs, and we have texts, and we have really pretty configuration examples. There are tons, like every monitor has been documented now. I don't know about every detector, but the idea of getting this stuff down so that all of the knowledge isn't held in just the hands of a few people is very, very important. And Ronnie, I think you were instrumental. He's got his Write the Doc shirt on. That was not planned. And this idea of getting this out to people in some sort of fashion is great. So I wanted everyone, start off with that. I wanted everyone to go and check this out. So head out to docs.com. Now, what else has changed? Well, we changed the license in OpenNMS 14. Now, I work for OpenNMS.com, so I work for the OpenNMS group, but we have within the OpenNMS organization this group called the Order of the Green Polo. A lot of them work for me because I tend to hire right from the Order of the Green Polo, but that is the organization that pretty much runs a lot of the decisions in OpenNMS, and we had an issue. We worked very, very hard on OpenNMS, and we could tell on the IRC channel and things like that there were people who were like, oh yeah, so what about multi-tenancy? What about this? And it was obvious they wanted to offer OpenNMS as a service. So they were going to take our work, put their logo on it, and offer it as a service, and the GPL doesn't prevent that in any way, shape, or form. So we're like, should we care? Should we do about this? And there was a lot of internal discussion over if we should change the license. And the decision was made to move to the Affero GPL, which basically says it's still open source, but it's a very strong copyleft license. And it basically says, if you offer OpenNMS as a service, you have to abide by the license. We've had in the past several license issues where commercial companies have taken OpenNMS and tried to commercialize it. They're not pleasant to me. To me, I'm into this for the fun. I'm into this for the technology. I'm into this for solving problems. So dealing with legal issues, but I think we can be a little bit flattered that someone thinks so much of our product that they're going to steal it and make a product out of it. We've got Siemens has this thing called Rugged NMS. It's based on OpenNMS. There's a new one, Cambridge Broadband has VNMS, which is based on OpenNMS. Now we're still trying to figure out exactly how they're abiding by the license, but by moving to the AGPL version 3, it gives us a little bit more enforcement options for people who take OpenNMS and don't give it back to the community. So that was a big change. We also we took and created a new version of LinkedD. So Antonio was responsible for a lot of LinkedD, this idea of can we take devices on the network and see how they are connected together? One of my favorite science fiction authors is this guy named David Brin, and he wrote a book called The Practice Effect. And it's one of my favorite types of books. It's like, let's take our world as we know it, change one thing and see what happens. And in his book, he changed the second law of thermodynamics. Basically, the second law of thermodynamics concerns entropy. In a way, you could say if I use something, it'll eventually fall apart. The more I use something, it wears down, it falls apart. In his book, it was the exact opposite. The more you used something, the better it got. So if you wanted, so you only needed one pair of clothes, because eventually it would get all clean, it would fit you perfectly, it would keep you warm in the winter, it would keep you cool in the summer. But if you were a rich person and wanted to have a lot of different clothes, you actually had to hire people pretty much your same size to wear your clothes, because if you put it in the closet, it would just decay. And this idea of, in open source, there's this practice effect. Someone will write a piece of code. Maybe it's not the greatest piece of code, but it'll do a little something useful. And someone else will say, wow, that's useful. I need to do this. And they'll write a little piece of code. And so over time, the piece of code gets better and better and better. And this is the thing that has happened with a LinkedD, which was enhanced LinkedD. And so we have now some very, very cool topology maps that you can pull out with OpenNMS. Next, some people in this room were responsible for adding operations panels, which we call the ops board. This is if you're sitting in your NOC and you have a big screen up and you want to see what happens. You can put your alarms in here, you can do some trending, you could put a weather map, you can put URLs, alarms, outages, etc. There are a number of different ops boards that you can add, and you can assign priorities to them. So let's say you have a priority 1 board. Well, it may appear every other time. So you might have a priority 1 board, a priority 2 board, then the priority 1 board, then a priority 3 board, then a priority 1 board. And even better than that, you can actually switch priorities based upon actions. So if a critical alarm shows up, you can change the priority of the alarm screen from a 2 to a 1 or a 3 to a 1 so that it shows up more often. It's pretty cool. So those are kind of the main things that we got out of OpenNMS 14. Now, I wanted to put this slide up because this is the first time as a group I've gotten to talk about this. So at OpenNMS.com, we have a bizarre business plan. It's called Spend Less Money Than You Earn. I know it sounds crazy. You know, at least in America with venture capitalists, the idea is we'll give you a bunch of money and you need to spend it as fast as you can to grow as fast as you can so that someone will buy you and we can make money. Our plan is, well, if we help customers and we have fun doing it, we'll eventually make money. And so that's what we've been doing for over 10 years now. One of the issues we have, however, is with support. And that is, I remember once, many years ago, I called up a customer and I said, hey, your support contract's about to expire. Are you going to renew? And they said, no. And I haven't seen any tickets. Is it something wrong? Did we do something wrong? And he's like, no, it just works. We haven't opened a ticket in a year. It just works. We really don't see the value of support. And so last year I got to go to Ireland for the first time. I got to work with Patrick. And Patrick's been coming to these things for 6 years now. Yeah, it's a long time. And so a very smart guy. And we get there, and it was a classic DevOps problem. It's like the operations people really didn't see the value in OpenNMS, and they were overwhelmed with alarms. So the first thing we did is we turned off all the alarms. And we went through and we looked, and we spent this week tuning the system. And I think it works out much better now, at least I hope. I'm going back in November, so we'll find out. And the idea was, could we package that? Could I take that Greenlight project, and could we build workflows and things and sell that as a service? The second issue the problem we had is the distance between 1.12 and OpenNMS 14 was like 18 months. We were doing a new stable release about every 18 months, which seems really, really slow. And part of the reason was we had to test everything because our business is support. So if we tried something new, let's say, I can remember someone submitted some code that used AngularJS. And at the time, we had no experience with AngularJS, so we had this debate in the company, should we accept this piece of code? Because if we do, then we've got to support it. And everyone wants to run the stable release, so no one was really downloading the development release. Some of you did, which we really appreciate. So we said, let's split OpenNMS. Basically, this is the Red Hat model. We're going to split OpenNMS into Red Hat Enterprise Linux and Fedora. And we decided to call the Fedora side Horizon, because the Horizon is always off in the distance, and we're always trying to get to the Horizon. The Horizon kind of moves with you. And then we decided to call the Red Hat Enterprise Linux version Meridian, because the Meridians stay put. The Meridians, even if the Earth rotates, the prime meridian is right through Cambridge. So, no, Greenwich, sorry, Cambridge is off to the west, sorry. In my universe, no. Anyway, so this is a slide here. One of the things, so we charge for access to Meridian. We charge a license fee to access Meridian, but the code is 100% open source, just like Red Hat. The idea is, if you have it, you can use it under the AGPL. You can, just like with Horizon. What has this gotten us? Well, if we go back to the original slide, it took us 18 months to get from 1.12 to 14. We went from 14, 15, and 16 in 6 months. We did 3 major releases in 6 months. And OpenNMS 17, Horizon 17, comes out next month in October. Well, yes, it's still September. So October, we should be releasing, probably toward the end of October, we should be releasing OpenNMS 17. So we're trying to migrate all of our support customers to Meridian, and we're going to do a Meridian release every year. And it'll be supported for 3 years. So we'll have a 2015 release that'll be supported until 2017. We'll have a 2016 release that'll be supported in 2018, et cetera. And the Meridian stuff actually lags. One of the problems we're running into is our customers really want the new shiny. They want all these new features, and we just have to say, look, you can run it, but it's hard for us to support that in order to really, really deliver high quality support. So everything I talk about from here on out is going to basically be focused on Horizon. I'm not here to sell you on anything, but I wanted to clarify that we're not doing the open core model. We're not going through and having a special version. In fact, Horizon always has more features than Meridian. What we focus on in Meridian is customization, reports, things like that. So feel free to come up to me if you have any questions about this, because I want to make sure that we don't have any confusion, that we're not trying to go behind the backs of the community or anything like this. What we're trying to do is this. Literally, this is Red Hat Software. They're a $13.3 billion company. And every piece of software they release is open source. I call it the CentOS test. It used to be when I'm old. I turned 50 in January. And when I was younger, we used to say it's not a party until something is broken. Now we say it's not a party until you've registered a domain name. And I own a lot of really crappy domain names because someone will say something, oh, we gotta get that .com, and it's so easy to register now. I was at trying to explain this issue with open core software, where people have a little piece that's open source, but you have to pay for all the really good features. And the guy looked at me and says, oh, that's kind of like Fopen source. F-A-U-X, Fopen source. So we registered fopensource.com. So we have the Fopen source definition now. We don't want to be that, and so I judge everything by the CentOS test. Can I take your code? I can go and get a copy of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. I can rip out all of their trademarks. I can recompile it, and I have a feature for feature perfect copy of the software. It's open source, if you can pass the CentOS test. And so it's funny, sometimes I need a binary. I'll be at a customer site running Red Hat, and I'll go grab the CentOS binary because it's easier to find and install it. It works just fine. So anyway, enough of that. So OpenNMS 15. Now with Meridian, we actually have a business motivation to make OpenNMS easier to use. The idea is, before, people would come up and they would say, okay, I'll give you some money if you add this feature to OpenNMS. And sometimes, if it's a complex feature, it's a lot of money. So as a business person, I had to look between, do I make OpenNMS easier to use, or do I make it more powerful? And so we always focused on making OpenNMS more powerful. With Meridian, if people are going to pay us money every year to have access to this particular piece of software, we need to make OpenNMS easier to use. The first step was revamping our web UI. And so what we've done here is we switched the web UI to use a technology called Bootstrap. And it's all responsive. Here is a shot of my basic Meridian. This is the one I use in the office on my phone. So as you can see, I've got a little drop-down menu here. I've got everything kind of scales and sits in the one setup. Here's the same page in Firefox. As you can see, I still have my menu items on the top, but as I scrunch things down, all of these different things move. So when it's no longer can fit, it'll actually all fit in one line. And when it shrinks down, it actually shows this. So it works on tablets, works on phones. It makes things a lot easier to navigate. So that was the first step we did. Now the second big thing is REST. We introduced REST 3 or 4 major releases ago. REST is relational state transfer. It's a way of exchanging data, usually in the form of XML, using HTTP. So if you want to request something from the system, it's basically an API. If you want to request something from the system, you do an HTTP GET with the URL in a special format. You get an XML object back that tells you, oh, here's my list of nodes, here's my list of current alarms, etc. What REST allows us to do is make other ways of interacting with OpenNMS. Our largest customers almost never use the web UI. They'll provision everything through OpenNMS, they'll get alarms through OpenNMS, everything through REST. So we wanted to make a mobile app. We wanted to make a very, very useful mobile app. And so we beefed up in OpenNMS, in Horizon 15, we beefed up the REST interface. And this enabled us to come up with OpenNMS Compass. If you haven't downloaded this, you should. It is really, really, really cool. It's a free app. It runs on iOS as well as Android. I'm very, very happy. Our first mobile app was iOS only, but now we release the iOS and Android versions at the same time. And so I asked my friend Ben, who wrote this, one of the things we try to do, I read a book about Google and how people at Google tend to focus on things they want to do. Well, Ben really likes doing mobile apps, and he's good at it. So he said, so we gave him free rein. It's like, go and make a mobile app. And so this is what he came up with. The latest version of this mobile app, when I hit the next screen, it's going to show a little video. So the latest version allows you to actually choose multiple servers. If you're on a Meridian server, it'll be blue. If you're on a Horizon server, it'll be green. And you can bring this up, log in, and we now even allow, so you can get your alarms, you can get your outages. Now we allow graphing. So you can actually go in through the app and you can look at graphs. So he's going to navigate down and look at some performance data. Wherever you see a star, you can favorite a graph. So you can now go through, he's going to go and favorite their CPU usage, etc. Here's NetSNP. All of your favorites show up on your home page. So once you're done going through, and you can mix and match. These are SNP graphs. You can go in and get latency graphs. So if you go into Bar Brady and go down to the resource graphs, he's going to go, I think, to here. Click. And you can get response time graphs. So all of your different data, you can actually combine together. You favorite them, and then when you go to the home page, you can go down the bottom, and there's your favorited graphs. And you can scroll through each of your favorited graphs. So really, 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 really cool stuff. Now there's another feature that I really like. So you can go and change, while you're sitting here, you can change the time span. So think about it. You're at lunch, or you're at dinner, and you get an alert that there's a problem with OpenNMS. You can actually diagnose it on your phone without having to go through and actually log into a full web browser. Now, as we start working on maps, one of the things we have in the maps is a geographical map, where you can map all your devices based upon where they are in the world. Well, that requires latitude and longitude. And you can go through and type in addresses and figure all this up. Well, if you have Compass, you can actually go bring up a graph, and it'll actually let you set the coordinates of your device from the phone. So when you go in and you set your device, it'll allow you to go in down in the asset table, and now you'll see that the lat and longitude have been added to the system. Useful? I don't know. I just think it's cool, and I'm a geek, so I'm going to go around and sit there and click on things. So what has this done? We just found out this month we got another Bossy. So the InfoWorld Best of Open Source Software, every year they talk about the best software in a certain category. And we were mentioned again this year. They kind of, I don't know if it's one. I mean, they had like 10 products that they mentioned. But we did get a Bossy. And if you notice, they put Compass right on the front page. This is one thing they talk about. They really, really like this mobile app. For me, I'm excited about the fact that Compass works so well because it validates our API. So we have a REST API that's useful. We can do some powerful things. Asinga is a fork of Nagios done by a company down in Nuremberg, and they wanted a Bossy as well, and they just introduced an API. It's like in Asinga 2, one of the main things was an API. So I think in management, we're going to find these APIs are going to be a lot more important, because the idea is let's glue stuff together, and APIs are the way you do that. So that was Horizon 15. Horizon 16, the big thing is the Grafana integration. As you notice, we're kind of working our way, for years and years and years, we used RD tool. That was the graphing process we used, RD tool. Well, getting this data and visualizing this data and combining different data sources is becoming very, very important. One thing that kind of frustrates me in OpenNMS is we're really broad. We do a lot of things, and there's companies like Splunk. Splunk focuses on logs. Boom. They don't do data collection, they don't do alerting, they don't do alarms, they don't do automation, they just do logs. And they're a huge company just doing logs. So we decided to leverage open source when it came to graphing, and there's a really, really good product called Grafana. And so now you can bring up Grafana, and there's an API in OpenNMS where you can connect to Grafana and you can print all of this different information. I'm sorry this looks so good. We're actually recording these slides as we do them, and this has to be 1024 by 768. So we'll put this presentation up somewhere, and you can see these pictures a little bit better. What was really cool about Grafana is we went to the Southeastern Linux Fest, which is held in North Carolina, where I live, and they allowed us access to the network. So Jesse White sat there and he kept typing all these things, and he made a dashboard where we were actually monitoring connections to all the different access points. Usually when you go to a conference, the network sucks. If you've ever been to especially Linux, I don't know if people are downloading ISOs or what, but every conference I've ever been to, the network sucks. This one didn't. This one was really thought out. And but they had access points everywhere. So we actually graphed all the different access points and how many people were connected, and then we could create a total total connection of who was connected on the different access points and whether they were connected via 802.11n or 802.11g. And this actually came in useful. This is one of those conferences that was on the weekend. And so about Sunday afternoon, people start leaving, and we're like, should we hang around? No one's coming by the booth. So we said, okay, when the number of people connected to the access points drops below 50, we're out of here. So we kept watching it go down. It's like, 50, let's go. So we packed up the booth. So why do we care about graphing? Why do we care about all these data sources? Well, here's a buzzword for today: Internet of Things. Internet of Things. We're going to connect everything now. We're going to connect our thermostats and our smoke detectors and our refrigerators and our doors and our TVs and our cars, and they're all going to be connected to the internet. And they're all going to need some form of management. Now, the BBC actually ran a story about, I think it was AMD. AMD had come out with, they'd open sourced the language for their microcontrollers. But it only worked for AMD devices, and Intel has its own language, and so they decided to refer to this as the Internet of Silos. That basically, we've got this dream of the Internet of Things, but what we've actually got is, you can connect Apple products to other Apple products, you can connect HP products to other HP products, but what this whole dream, if you've listened to Bad Voltage, in the last Bad Voltage episode, Jeremy was talking about, there's all these different protocols, and you need a hub. So he has to have like 3 different hubs, and each hub in his house talks a different protocol. To me, the only way we're going to be able to bring everything together in the Internet of Things is through open source. Only by saying, okay, here's the rules. Here's some very permissively licensed tools. Everybody use these tools, and then we can play nice with each other, because then no one has a vested interest in kind of creating these silos. I honestly think OpenNMS can be positioned to be the platform for the Internet of Things. I don't know if everyone's seen how I monitor my drink machine. We have a drink machine in the office, and we monitor it with OpenNMS. Pretty much, if you can get the data out there, we can manage it. The problem we run into is scale. We scale pretty darn good for a management tool. We were at a customer in Italy, and they had HP OpenView. HP OpenView couldn't discover the devices. The devices were too big. There were these Junos switches with like 300,000 virtual interfaces on them. OpenNMS couldn't discover it either, but we fixed that. So now we can. The question is, how do we get to this Internet of Things scale? The first thing is we've got to have a place to store the data. So we came up with a project called OUCE. OUCE stands for New Time Series Database. So it's a new time series database that basically says, instead of using RD tool, which Toby Edeker has been at this conference, he's a great guy, but RD tool, you write to these little files, your disk I/O can be a huge issue. They actually operate on the values, so it's hard to store the exact value you get. And we needed a way to store billions and billions of data points. Well, OUCE was built on Cassandra. And Cassandra was started by Facebook, and it's an Apache project. And it is massively scalable, highly distributable, very, very robust. This is an example of, I think they call it the Lambda configuration, where you can have multiple instances in Australia, multiple instances in North America, South America, et cetera, and then connect those together, and the data goes everywhere. And so OUCE allows you to put time series data into the Cassandra database. It's licensed, Apache licensed, so it's a very permissively licensed piece of software. We actually have contributors working on it now. The gentleman who actually wrote it for us when he worked for us, Eric Evans, he's gone to work for the MediaWiki Foundation. And MediaWiki has people who are really looking into OUCE. At DevJam, we were playing with databases with like 7 billion data points. We'd found some weather data. We put that into Cassandra on top, OUCE through Cassandra, and we were, doing queries that were almost instantaneous on a laptop. This wasn't server-grade hardware. This was just a laptop. So we're very, very excited about OUCE. OUCE is coming. Horizon 17, next month. If you so choose, you will be able to start storing your data in a Cassandra database, running OUCE. We hope that this will get rid of any performance issues any of you might have. Now, the second thing is we use our D tool for graphing. So how are we going to handle graphing? Well, Jesse White wrote a tool called Backshift. It's a JavaScript library. Yeah, so it's based on a JavaScript library. And this is just an example of, this is the existing RRD tool, system memory stats, talking to RRD files. This is the same data living in OUCE and being described in the database, in the web UI. Is Backshift used for Compass? Yeah. So all of the graphs that you saw on the Compass demo were also from Backshift. So really, really excited about this. And again, Alex, I saw Alex for maybe 10 minutes when he got in this morning, so we didn't plan this. But there's a company I really dislike. I'm not going to mention their name, but they're one of the open source companies. And they were going to come to this trade show where we will unveil the next version of our product. We're going to unveil. This is open source. We don't unveil anything. You should be able to go to GitHub. You should be able to look at everything that's being done. We don't have secrets in open source, so we're not unveiling OUCE. It's there. You can actually check out the development branch right now and use it. But in 17, it'll be a Horizon. It'll be a stable release. You will be able to finally start scaling your performance data collection pretty much as high as you want. Is that exciting? It's exciting to me. Now, to download it, well, I do actually have, this is kind of cool too. So what's next? So we've got our graphing library, so we can graph all these different data sources. We have our database. What we need now is how do we get data into the database? And this project, which is coming in Horizon 18, is called Minion. This was long before Despicable Me came out. It was probably 20 years ago. I envisioned this highly distributable network management platform. And for lack of a better word, I said, what we need to do is put these little minions out, little helpers out, and they would talk back to a central instance of the management platform. It wasn't even OpenNMS. And we call that Dominion. So we got the Dominion, and then we've got these little minion players. Well, coming in Horizon 18, we will have the Minion. I'm hoping it'll run on a Pi 2. We're hoping to get it that lean. I don't know, Seth, is it possible?
There's no technical reason why it wouldn't work.
Yeah. So no technical reason. That's a great answer. But the idea is, yeah, you have cheap hardware, you drop this on, it uses Carafe, so once it's installed, the central OpenNMS server can do updates, can change all the configuration, you don't have to do anything to the box. And again, we don't unveil anything. You want to play with Minion? Go to the Minion project page, and you can just download the RPMs. So you have client RPMs and server RPMs, and you can get it running. The name of the working title of this project was SNEPO, which is OpenNMS backwards. But it's kind of funny since a lot of the work was started in Germany, and SNEPO is shorthand for schnitzel and potatoes. And so we all have schnitzel and potatoes. So the Minion's coming. And this is what we're going for. Now, I did steal this from Despicable Me. But it's this idea of let's have all these little minions out there. You can have them if you're a hotel, you could have one on a hotel or one on every hotel floor. If you're a manufacturing company, you could have one on every production line in your system. You can have the agent running in your car. You could have it elsewhere. And the idea is that then you get this Internet of Things scale. And we're not talking about this. We're not sitting here trying to get VC to have this grand plan. We're doing it. And when I say we, I mean other people than me. People in this room are actually making this happen. And it makes me very, very, very proud to be involved with OpenNMS. So one last slide. Our mission, I want to remind everybody, we want OpenNMS to be the de facto standard platform. We want everybody running OpenNMS. We want HP running OpenNMS. We want IBM running OpenNMS. We have all these APIs, we have all these plugins, use OpenNMS as a base, plug in on top of it. It's great. And while everyone works for OpenNMS, I think we can all agree that there are 2 main rules. The first rule, OpenNMS will always be free. as in free software, as in freedom. And the second rule is OpenNMS will never suck. We are never going to put something out there that we don't like, that we don't think is ready. And this is a promise. As I stand here as a person who works for OpenNMS.com, I want to promise all of our users and all of our contributors that we are always going to keep OpenNMS free and make sure it never sucks. So that's what I got. So I'm hoping everyone has a great conference. If you look at the conference plan, I'm not going to put Seth on the spot because he says the demo's kind of sort of working. But we have demos for some of this stuff. We have people talking about business cases for OpenNMS. We have people talking about OpenNMS in the Internet of Thingies. We have a bunch of good stuff. Tonight, we've got Bad Voltage. It's going to be on this stage right here. We've got lots and lots and lots of beer, which I hear makes Germans funnier. And I definitely know it makes Bad Voltage funnier. So we're going to start here around 7:30. Again, I'm going to be here pretty much. We've got 6 of the 10 full-time employees of OpenNMS.com here, as well as all of our German contractors. Come talk to us, enjoy it. I want you to get a lot out of this conference. Thank you for making OpenNMS possible.